Welcome to the Winning Edge podcast, where we share focus, fueling, and faith-filled stories and strategies to give young athletes the tools they need to become the best version of themselves as athletes and individuals.
What you eat and how you think can transform your athletic performance and overall well-being. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or fitness enthusiast looking to gain that mental edge and optimize your health, this podcast is for you. We are your hosts. I'm Lindsay, former collegiate athlete, coach, educator, and educational coach for over 20 years, and a mom of 2 young athletes.
And I'm Stacy, registered.
Today, joining us on the podcast is Donald Lawrence, the newly appointed head football coach and campus athletic director at Cy Park High School in Cypress, Texas. With over 18 years of experience across Texas high school athletics, Coach Lawrence arrives at Cy Park following successful tenures as head football coach and boys campus athletic director at Clear Lake High School, as well as key leadership roles at Langham Creek, Pearland, and A&M Consolidated High Schools. He is a graduate at Jersey Village High School and a former player. He is deeply connected to the Cypress Fairbanks ISD community. His academic credentials include a Bachelor of Arts from Texas Lutheran University, a Master of Education from Abilene Christian University, and principal certifications from Lamar University, underscoring his commitment to developing student athletes both on and off the field. Celebrated for modeling leadership and character, Lawrence was honored with the U.S. Marines Semper Fi Coach Award in 2023. He is known for fostering a culture of discipline, growth, and achievement, and is enthusiastic about building a positive future for Cy Park athletics and its student athletes. As the Tigers enter a new era under his guidance, Coach Lawrence's vision is centered on competitive excellence, student development, and community engagement. Coach, we are thrilled to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me a platform to share a little bit about our program and where we're going moving forward.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens with Cy Park. I'm next door at Row, and so it's been really awesome to see all the things that you're doing at Park that are involving the middle school kids that are, going to funnel up to you soon. And to see you guys and your coaching staff come out and support our football program and our sports programs has been really nice.
It's a key part of the plan for long term, definitely.
I love that. I have to ask you, before we get into the deeper questions, what led you into your coaching career? Because a lot of athletes play and don't necessarily move into coaching down the road. So what made you fall into the coaching path?
Well, I've always loved athletics. I've always loved competition. I played multiple sports growing up, played football at the Division III level at Texas Lutheran University, and really was going to go to school to be a lawyer. And it just so happened my college coaching staff broke up my senior year of college. And my position coach ended up taking a job down in the valley at Brownsville Porter, which is where I got my start, and just happened to ask if I'd be willing to go down there. And I said yes. So that's what started it. And it's been the best decision I've made besides my wife.
Love that. I love that. I think it's, it's funny too, because I've talked to so many coaches through Span Athletics now, and everyone's story of how they get into coaching is so different, but it's like, it just, kind of falls in your lap. It just happens. It's like, you're pulled into it. So I want to know, before we get into the deeper questions again, I do want to ask if you can describe the state of the Cy Park football program when you were handed over the reins.
Well, I think everyone knows, and it's well documented, our struggles and the losing streak that was here when I took over. And what I came into was a program that was, I guess, for lack of better words, not split, but more splintered. There was just a lot of different needs that needed to be addressed, right? We had from mentality to mindset to what we want to accomplish and how we want to accomplish it. And there wasn't a clear, concise vision for how to kind of put down the shovel, right? And grab a rope and start pulling ourselves out, right? Instead of digging. So that was kind of what I walked into. But I'll tell you this, the kids and the community and the admin have been great up to this point. And I'm looking forward to helping and sharing a little bit more about the plan to get this thing turned around.
I love it. What is your vision and mission for your program? Let's start with on the field. What's your vision and your mission for the football program itself?
Well, our mission is winning. That's our mission. And it's as simple as that. And then how we do that is we have a couple daily standards, right, that we hold our guys to. And I'm a guy that believes in less is more. The more rules and things you have, the less likely they are to follow them. And then you have no rules, right? So we start simple. The mission is winning. Our daily standards are perform to the best of my ability, and have a positive impact on the team. So anybody can do that. It doesn't take a bunch of talent to make those two daily standards happen. You just have to be cognizant of them. And those are the things that we reinforce as coaches daily to make sure that they are giving great effort and to make sure that their attitude and energy is positively impacting the team. Our core values, we use gold, right? That's one of our things. Gold is special. Not everybody has gold in their color schemes. And not only that, but one of the things that I thought it did was unite us with Row because y'all have the same colors as us. And so we kind of came up with the gold blooded, and that was really just to start those kids out in 6th grade. And I want to be black and gold, moving up from Row, moving into Cy Park. So GOLD is an acronym which stands for grit, ownership, love, and discipline. And the way we define grit is performing to your highest level, regardless of feeling or circumstance. And that's one of the biggest things
I love that.
that we have an issue with, not only with our players or our athletes, but just in the school in general, right? Is not letting some little simple outside influence throw us off for the day. Like, you have to be able to perform regardless of how you feel, regardless of the circumstances surrounding your situation. The O is for ownership, and that's just taking full responsibility for the team's processes and the outcomes, right? Like, I think a lot of focus goes on to the outcomes. And
Mhm.
going back to your original question about the state of the program, we're so worried about the outcome of a win, but what are the processes to get to the win? How are we handling our business on a day-to-day basis, whether it's in the weight room, the locker room, the classroom, the hallways at practice, all those things. So taking responsibility for the processes and outcome is ownership. Love, all right. Having a passion and a drive to prepare, work, and compete to be at your best. And you have to love competition and athletics and everything that comes with it. You're not always going to be successful. You're not always going to feel good, but
Mhm.
you have to have a passion for those things. And then discipline is the last one. And I think discipline usually has a negative connotation, but in reality, it just means doing the right thing over and over, right? So how we define it is choosing to do what is required to be successful in all aspects of your life. So we talk a lot about making choices and the choices that you make. How did that positively or negatively impact the team? So, everyone, not born a winner, you're not born a loser, you're born a chooser. You have a choice. So discipline is just choosing to do what's required in order to get the outcomes that you want.
Love that. That's awesome. I'm sitting here, I'm like writing it down because I think that, a lot of times kids hear, okay, we want to win, but they're
Right.
not understanding what all goes into that every day. It's not just at practice, it's not just at the games. You have to take responsibility for every decision you make. And I love that you have ownership as the O because a lot of times I do think that athletes, they struggle. They want to put the blame on other people or make excuses for things instead of understanding that if you own it, now you're bringing self reflection into the process. That's going to make you a better person, a better athlete across the board in your life. So I love this.
And
Gold.
that's one of the things too that you had mentioned, a better person. Like, better people make better teams, right? So
Hmm.
like the more we can develop them as people, not just in athletics, but in the classroom, in the hallways, in the community, the better the team will be in the long run.
I completely agree. I want to go back to the G in gold, grit. So can you restate for grit how it's the attitude and the approach?
Yeah, absolutely. So grit is kind of goes back to our daily standard number one, right?
Hmm.
Performing to the best of my ability. So performing at the highest level, regardless of feeling or circumstance. Okay. One
Yep.
thing that we have got to eliminate from the program, and I talk to the guys about, is you got to get rid of self pity, right? Self pity either wants attention for what you're going through, or self pity is shutting down and not being willing to perform because you feel like the odds are stacked against you. Like, we've got to
Yeah.
get rid of that. So, I think tough people win. And I think grit
Hmm.
is a huge part of that. And, regardless of circumstance, we all know the circumstance. Unfortunately, the losing streak has continued through
Hmm.
the start of my tenure.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I talk to the coaches about is, we have to model this behavior every day, right? Like,
Yeah.
the kids can't come down, and if they are in a mood or, they don't want to work, we cannot match their energy. So I think we've done a pretty good job of that. And I'll tell you what, the practices are still spirited. Our kids are still getting after it.
Mhm.
We still have our guys coming out ready to work. And we put together a pretty competitive game against a good side Woods team the other night for at least 3.5 quarters. The score got away from
Yeah.
us a little bit at the end, but I think I was proud the way our guys competed the other night.
And I love that because I think that a lot of times younger kids and high school kids, they see a scoreboard and that's winning or losing to them. But when you focus on your gold standard, it's so much more than just the ending scoreboard. It's the growth over the season, it's the growth over the week. It's a kid making a good decision that hadn't made a good decision previously. So I think that the standard that you're holding these kids to, they may not see, on a scoreboard that there's a whole lot of growth at the moment, like when they're looking at it. But when they're able to reflect and see over the season how far it's progressed, it's just going to be compounded over the next 4 years as well. And then
Yeah,
I think that's setting you up for success.
and I agree with that, and one of the things that, we're cognizant to make sure we relay to the kids too is, the scoreboard for that week is not just a reflection of how you prepared that week, right? It all goes
Hmm.
back into off season. So taking over a program that really from the beginning of spring break until I got here in late April, and then when I got here, it was kind of a mass exodus. It was me and a
Yeah.
couple other coaches trying to hold it down through the rest of the year. Like, while we were going through all that as a program, like these other programs are having spring ball. These other programs are in the final weeks of their strength training.
Right.
These other programs are taking momentum into 7-on-7 and things like that into the summer. Whereas we're just getting started. We're trying to get our staff together. We're trying to build relationships, because rules without relationships, you get rebellion, right? So
Love it. Yes.
all that stuff was taking place while these other programs that have had a few years jump on us or have had established coaches that have been there for a while, their processes are rolling. And
Yeah.
so I think it's important to let our kids know, like, this off season is huge, right? Like, we're not going to have the benefit of the doubt or any excuses moving forward. So we got to hit it and get it done right moving into the off season.
Absolutely, and successful programs are built in the off season. I mean, that's where the work is done. How do you communicate that vision consistently to the school community and the stakeholders that are within the community? Because like you've said, other programs have had the backing of the community and they've had this momentum going. And so coming in as a new head coach and pretty much rebuilding this program, you're having to establish all those relationships and build that trust again. So how
Well,
do you do that?
it starts with the kids. The kids they're gonna be the ones that tell their parents at the dinner table or tell the community how they're being treated and the standard that they're being held to, right? And the
Mhm.
structures within the practice and how we move from place to place and the different things that we do to try to reinforce, everything from taking care of your locker room to the weight room, all that stuff. So the
Right.
kids are your biggest advocate in that, and we've had some really, even though we're struggling, we've had some really good, I guess, just words of encouragement and support from various parents and community members along the way, even parents and community members that you wouldn't necessarily would think, right?
Mhm.
And those words of encouragement have been huge. The next aspect is, you know, I am fully aware that we are judged by the product that we put out there on the field, right? And it's not to the standard that we're going to expect moving forward right now. And that's the window into our program that a lot of the community sees, right? So that's been really tough, but you have to combat that with, we had 2 kids out of 165 not pass that UIL grade check, 2, right? We had 1 freshman,
Wow.
1 varsity, like, that's so celebrating that stuff, making sure our
Yeah,
community
that
knows,
is huge.
sharing that on Sports U and on our social media. The work and things that our guys put in at practice and
Mhm.
the you had talked earlier before we got started about the row pep rally, our guys being engaged with the community, doing
Yeah.
things outside of their comfort zone, right? And doing it with their headphones put away, with their cell phones putting away, like
Right.
engaging in what is happening and living in that moment of time, and then sharing that with our community through our social media outlets and Instagram and X and all that stuff is really the main way we go about it. And then also being available for the parents when they do have questions, they do have concerns, making sure that we try to get back to them in an email or a phone call within a couple days when possible.
Yeah. I know the middle school kids idolize high school athletes. I mean, they want to become them. And so letting the high school football players come over and be seen and, it just it gives them a different experience that I don't necessarily think high school athletes feel like they're role models to younger kids. I mean, they might think that with younger siblings and whatnot, but I don't know if they understand the magnitude of their role as an athlete. And so coming over and building that engagement with the middle school kids and letting them feel like, hey, these kids look up to me. I matter to these younger kids. I do think that it changes the way that they view themselves as well.
Yeah, that was a really unique timing on that. When we were planning this in the summer, our goal was to connect the campuses better than what it's been, right?
Hmm.
So that was kind of the goal. And obviously, we weren't planning on us having the record we were having. And we weren't planning on Roe coming off 2 eighth grade championships the night before.
Right,
Kinda
right.
worked out, and I was really proud. We talked to our guys about going over there and being engaged and having their chin up and their shoulders back and smiling and cheering on the fine arts, and I think they did a really good job with that, so I was pleased.
Yeah, that was wonderful. How do you, as a coach, because I know we have a lot of coaches that listen in. This is our coaches series, but there's a lot of coaches going into positions where their program is out of place, much like where Park has been. How do you start changing the habits and expectations without overwhelming the players? Because I know you introduced the gold standard and your coaching team does a phenomenal job of modeling that. But how do you start changing those habits and expectations for the kids without them being overwhelmed?
Okay, so there's a couple things to that. One thing is I always try to keep in mind there's something I read from Mac Brown when he got the North Carolina job back in the mid 90s, right? And it's a
Mhm.
quote that just said, if it was a good job, he wouldn't have gotten it, right? So that's when he first started out. So I try to keep that in mind, right? With the vision of number one, the infrastructure and the people are here for this to be a great job. I had a great job, right? And I believe that the ceiling is extremely high here. We still have homes being built. We've had a lot of
Mhm.
success at the middle schools. We got excellent middle school coordinators at both Rowe and Thornton, and
Mhm.
the kids are here. They're all along 99. You look at all the programs along 99, they're winning, right? So we
Mhm.
just got to keep our kids. So that would be one thing. And then the next thing is it starts with the relationships of getting the coaches in here and building the relationships, right? So that's huge for kids. Everybody wants things to be microwaved and happen super fast. And I'm a
Mhm.
big believer in sometimes you have to go slow, right, before you can go fast. So you have to build the relationships and the trust with the players. And then
Mhm.
we've also been dealing with this fine line of, okay, I know myself and the staff, we have these urges of all of a sudden we're going to come in and we want to just make it how off season is going to be with our guys that are returning, but we're still in season and we have a group of
Mhm.
seniors. It's that we owe it to let them have a positive experience. Let them finish this thing out right. Let them enjoy their time being in football. And we're not going to all of a sudden flip everything upside down where we're having all these reminders on different things and ruin their senior year, right? So
Mhm.
goal is to put as good of a product on the field that we can, holding these standards, right? Without trying to break the kids mentally right now. That's for those dark days in
Right.
December and January when we have those moments in off season and those discussions and those lessons. So that part's been really hard, but we owe it to the seniors, right? To keep putting together the best game plans possible. And we talk about you need to have this game plan like we were 5-0 as opposed to 0-5. Like it needs to be the same quality, same everything
Right.
that we would do it. So our processes are being in place, and that's really what we're focused on as a staff is making sure that okay, when we get our full roster, when we have our kids here, when they've been in the system, they've gone through off season, they've done the weights, they've done the running, they've had the investment. Our processes are the same, and so that's really the where we're kind of laying the floor right now as a coaching staff.
Yeah. Have you had much pushback from returning players, or has it been, you know,
Uh,
expected or better than you expected?
It's been better. So I will tell you, like one of the positives has just been how well the players have embraced myself and the staff, right?
Awesome.
So that's been a positive. Now, has there been pushback? Absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely, right? That's gonna happen. That happens anywhere. So, but much pushback, I would not. I would say no, not much.
that's great. I know coaching turnover and coaching changes, all through college even. I mean, it can shake a program. So I love that, you haven't had very much of that and it's been a positive process. I do want to ask, when I talk with you a little bit about the alignment between the football staff and program and your athletic department. How important is that for your program and for the athletic program to be aligned? Like, does the gold standard carry over for all of athletics, or is that a football thing? Or, how do you gel that, because you're over the athletic program?
Okay. So as the campus athletic coordinator, there's a couple things that I believe in, right? I believe in positive energy from our staff and coaches. I believe in them being self-sufficient. I believe in them being able to identify and see problems and being able to address problems based on the standards that I keep without having to bring everything to my desk, right? And so the football staff and most of these guys I've worked with in the past, and we've been able to put together an incredible group of coaches who have come from winning programs, who have winning thoughts, habits, and priorities to be a part of our football staff. And then that's obviously the closest group that I'm with, right?
Right.
And they've positively impacted the other programs on campus with kind of that vision. I believe that you hire great people and you let those great people have a vision and you let them do their job, right? They're the ones with boots on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Does my gold standard necessarily work for softball, for example? I think it could, but if I'm the head softball coach, like I would want to create my own standards. Like this is my team expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Within the mission of winning, right? We want to win. Okay. So my job for those programs is to say yes, right? To be supportive, to try to help them get whatever they want. There is a lot of paperworks and checks and things that I got to go through on those programs. But when I meet with those head coaches, it is more of, what are you doing in your program? How do you get this done? Stealing ideas, bouncing ideas off of each other to see what they're doing and supporting their roles. So I think in that way, like my leadership style rubs off on some of the other programs, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in going in and telling these different programs that have different needs and different, have different populations of students that are playing their sports that this is how we do it in football and this is how you need to do it, right? Like I wouldn't want to work my way up to being a head coach to have somebody implement that on me.
No, I love that. I was just curious because, we've talked to a lot of coaches. We haven't had as many athletic directors on. And so that's something that, we had been discussing off the podcast, just like, how does that translate to the other teams on the campuses? But what it sounds like is you're on board with whatever great ideas they have. Like, you're building that culture and you support your coaches. And so that's fabulous. And it definitely sounds like communication is a huge part of the athletic department at Park.
Communication is huge, right? Like, there's certain things we gotta do from a campus standpoint and from a
Mhm.
district standpoint and from a state standpoint, and it's my job to make sure our head coaches are doing that. I will say this, one thing that has kinda rubbed off, and took off that I wasn't really expecting is the gold-blooded, right? So, the gold-blooded, like, it's just what are we looking for, right? Like, somebody that's gold-blooded is somebody that's gonna compete, somebody that's, here to win, somebody that's going to do whatever you ask them, somebody that's going to show up with positive energy and attitude every day, somebody that's willing to be a glue guy. And by a glue
Yep.
guy, I mean somebody that whatever's needed, right, for whatever
Mhm.
program, right? It's all of our responsibilities. Kind of goes back to the ownership. If the door needs to be unlocked to let some athletes in, we're not sitting there
Mhm.
waiting on another head coach or whatever. We're going to take care of our kids. So, that part's really taken off, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I do love that. Gold blooded. Do you have like an award for that? You could have like, gold blooded athlete wall or something.
No, not yet. Not
It's coming
yet, but
probably.
yeah, I mean, when you think of what is a Cy Park guy or Cy Park girl,
Mhm.
a Cy Park athlete, what embodies that? I guess that would be how you define it.
I love it. How do you teach leadership to your players, especially in a culture of, you're rebuilding a program right now? How do you teach that leadership? Because you're a leader, you lead coaches. So how do you prepare the next group of leaders coming up?
Okay. So one of the things that we have not had this year is we haven't voted on captains. And the reason why is I haven't seen anybody with consistent standards that I would define as a captain. So I usually pick 2 players a game to be a captain. That's not how we want to operate. I think number 1, it starts with modeling it as adults. Okay. And then number two is being able to develop it. And that's all done in our off-season program. So what I have and where we start with is I start with program installation when we start off season. And program installation is going through what we had already talked about, right? The mission, the daily standards, the core values, how you accomplish that, how you demonstrate it, how the locker room's supposed to look from the locker room to the weight room, what that transition looks like. All those things go into program installation. We also have a player to player survey. Okay, so it's 5 questions and we ask the players, they fill it out for every kid. Okay. And it's how does this player demonstrate grit? Like we define that ownership, the love, the discipline, and then they rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. And then the last question, question 5, all right, is how athletic is this person for their position? So there's 4, right, that are kind of character built, and then there's one that's athletic built, and we call it the fight for 50. And you're trying to get to the closest to 50 on average as possible. Okay, so once we do that, we take the top 4 scores. Okay. Those 4 scores become captains. All right. So now we're putting them in a leadership position, whether they want to or not. Okay. From there, we take the next top 16 and they draft their leadership team. So they're going to pick, we end up drafting 3 additional members of the highest scoring people to be a part of their leadership team. So now they have their leadership team of 4. Okay. So you have 4 teams of 4, all voted on or surveyed by their peers as quality character guys, right? So then they draft out the rest of the players. And then within that, within our offseason, everything's scored, right? Like, do you have your stuff? Are you here on time? Is your locker shut? And we put them in bays in the locker room where they're all together. And those 4 captains are on the ends of those bays. And they're responsible for making sure that their group gets there, right? That everybody's on time, everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. So we develop it that way. They all have a coach that they can use kind of as an advisor. You're able to trade people. You're able to remove people, and now you lose points, but it could help you earn points in the long run. And everything is kind of a competition. And so that's how we develop it. As we also have little leadership school and lessons that I go through about once a week. That's about 5 to 10 minutes with that leadership group. And then just reinforcing daily standards and reminders that you can be a leader regardless of your position. And how does that look like? And what do you do? So that's how we develop it. We need it, right? We have guys that I think want to be leaders, but they're inconsistent. We have guys that are unsure, like what it looks like. We have a bunch of that in our program right now. So I'm looking forward to that part of off season and see what guys emerge during that process.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. You must have a military background or something. I don't know. Cause it sounds so much better than, you vote on who are your co-captains, because a lot of times, and we did a podcast on this about how athletes are leaders, but they don't always know it or they don't know how to be. Sometimes athletes that are leaders are kind of hiding. They're hiding with the rest of the group and they don't know how to step forward, or they're not sure of what that looks like. So when you're able to kind of draw that out of them and grow and develop leaders, you're giving such power to kids to kind of learn who they are and develop those skills. So I love that. And the fact that they're competing in these groups, that's amazing.
Well, there's 2 things that we found to get to this part, right? Like, number 1, people are more comfortable being leaders in smaller, intimate groups, right? So if you ask them to be a leader of the whole team, that's a big task. This is a group that you selected, right? So you kind of develop the ownership, right? The responsibility for the team's processes and outcomes during that part. And the second thing that really made this take off was we give them colors, right? So they have to wear our stuff, our shorts and shirt, but any accessories or swag or whatever they can provide, that's their team colors, right? So we'll have black, we'll have white, we'll have gray, we'll have gold. And that's like your team. That's your identity is within the team. And when we started adding that component to it, to where you had an identity and you weren't just Bay One or Team One, that really kind of made everything take off to another level.
I'm sure that this also helps your kids build relationships with one another and just kind of strengthen that family mentality as a team. because they're constantly, so you said off season, they're able to earn points for their team. And I'm guessing that kind of goes into the season as well a little bit. But the way that they're able to work with one another and have conversations that may not be comfortable as high school kids, like, hey, you're not pulling your weight. You've been late to practice 2 times, like giving them that ownership and ability to have the conversations as young adults and problem solve and support one another. That's amazing. I love it. Have there been moments when you see that, you're where your team is and you can see that they're starting to really trust the process and get the direction of where you're going?
There have been moments. Yeah, there's definitely been moments. I wish those moments were strung together a little better. But I'll tell you this, like, I guess when you say moments, I instantly think of games, right? Because games, like we said before, that's the window that the community has into your program. And then you have this other component, and kind of going back to some of the words of encouragement, or some of the people from the community or within the faculty here giving compliments. Everything that is said about us or thought about us is a ripple effect of what's happening within the program, right? And so I think more of those moments have happened in the day-to-day operations, right? Than necessarily stringing together like great plays of a drive on offense or stops on defense, although those have shown up. I think those moments are showing up more prevalently in our day-to-day operations, as far as our kids being on time and acting right in the classroom and being supportive of other students and, taking care of their grades and all that stuff. So there have been plenty of positives, and like I told our principal, there's going to be a lot of wins in the dark right before you get to the wins on Friday night. So those wins in the dark are happening, and we celebrate those, and I think you have to. And at some point, those wins in the darks will show up on game night.
Absolutely. And I think as coaches, you see the small victories, you can see those things happening in practices, or, the conversations kids are having in the locker room, or maybe, their grades when you're doing grade checks, you can see all those things. But for the outside looking in, it is the games. And that's why I wanted to ask you, because there's so many good things happening with your team and with your athletes. It's going to take a little bit more time, I think, for the outsiders who are looking in or just catching what's the score of the game at the end of the week, for them to really get all that you've done, all that's been being put into place where you're at right now. So,
Well, yeah, and I think it goes back to that word that I used earlier. Like, everybody wants like results to be microwaved and happen instantly, and it's we're choosing to trust our process and believe in our process. And then also, I think, going back to your campus and the kids that have had success in 8th grade and 7th grade, and then Thornton as well has been very competitive. What we have to offer, no one else can offer, right? Like, we're getting a late start as a staff, right? We're coming into a situation that wasn't the greatest, and everybody else kind of has an established brand or logo. But if you look at them, they've all kind of plateaued. Okay. And some of them plateau in the first round, second round, but they've plateaued. You got an opportunity to come in and put your name on something from the ground up, and all the notoriety and excitement that comes with that opportunity to be the face of change. And I think is really special. And so it's sharing that vision and getting people to believe in that vision. Because I also know that in their head, they're also thinking, I got 4 years to get a college scholarship. Okay. All right. So I get that part of it. And then us as coaches have got to be good salesmen, and like, we always welcome in our college recruiters. Anything that we can do to help you with recruiting, we're going to do. And when all of a sudden Cy Park starts winning and these coaches start coming in and around, and you're the face of that, the opportunities that are going to present itself are going to be huge.
absolutely. So what are your next steps now that you laid the foundation? I know that this off season is going to be huge for you, going into prepping them for next season, but you've got so much work and so many goals in this off season coming. So what are your next steps?
Okay, so beyond the off season, like, the off season is definitely our next step, putting together a full season. The next part along with that is having a plan in place. And right now we're looking at a team of 3 coaches to be able to get to Rowe on Monday and Wednesday for their 8th grade athletic period, and on to Thornton on Tuesday and Thursday, and have that constant relationship and contact with those kids. So we keep those kids. That's a big part of
Yeah.
what we're doing. Another part of it is making sure our kids are competitive year round. So if you're not talented enough to make the basketball team or the baseball team, you're either in wrestling or you're in track. Once we get that going, and starting in about February, we will transition to being football specific during the athletic period and using that 1 hour of mandatory strength and conditioning after school, and having our guys committed to doing that and taking the late bus home or finding rides to get that done, because we have a lot of football that we need to cover. Right. A lot of scenarios. Like if you just talk about what our guys know now, it's a lot of the base, down, and distance offense. Like that's because it's what we do is so different than what they've done. That transition's been a little bit of a struggle. And so, our short yardage stuff, our backed up, all our third and longs, all our crazy special team scenarios, all those things we need time to teach and cover and rep in order to put together a complete football team by next fall. So that's the next part. And then always staff, right? Like staff is the most important thing. I love our staff right now, and I want our staff to grow, be in positions to grow and excel. And if they get different opportunities, then I'm all about it. And that gives us an opportunity to bring in somebody else with new ideas that can help us out. So taking care of the staff and making sure that they continue to develop as well.
Well, it sounds like a really strong plan. And, I know that you have the plan in place for retaining the incoming freshman class. And I do want to point out because, a lot of our listeners are not in Texas, or they're not in a big area like we are in Cy-Fair, but we don't really have the benefit um of going in a smaller town where you're K through 12, right? Where you've got these players from, you see them when they're little all the way. They're coming through. It's like a pipeline coming up, versus a big school district like we're in, where there's feeder schools and there's options. They could be right next door to you, and it could be a player you think you're going to get, but they're going to a different high school. And so it is harder, I think, in the greater Houston area and other big areas in Texas, where it's not like they're in that town. That's where they're going. That's the school they're playing at. And so you do have a lot more to worry about and to put effort into to retain those players. So I love your plan. I know our kids at Row are so happy to have y'all over. And I love the idea of y'all going and being with them in their athletic periods to kind of, build that relationship with them, let them feel comfortable in knowing who y'all are and get excited about going and being a part of your program. What advice would you give other coaches that are going to be taking on similar roles that like you're in right now?
To trust that you got the job because of the vision that you laid out to administration, whether it be your principal or your AD, and that it's not going to be easy, and that you have to be consistent, and that you're going to have good people go with you to get your vision across and to follow through with it. I think there's absolutely no way that I can do this by myself. And it's not just a fear of micromanaging or whatever, but you have to have the right people in place and to find those people and support those people, because they're going to have a lot more impact when you talk about 2 coaches, 4 coaches, 6 coaches, the amount of people that they're going to be able to impact on a daily basis as opposed to just you. Focus on coaching those guys up and letting them go out there and do the work for you, in the sense of those day-to-day responsibilities and relationships that help carry out your vision. And then, I think the biggest thing is just sticking with it. I said this in the interview here when they asked me, what do you think the hardest part of the turnaround is going to be? My answer was seeing it through, because I knew it was going to take some time, right? So what we have is an opportunity to where you go into something that's not great, and the goal is to come out the other side looking like a genius. So that's the fight. And one of the things in my notes that I have in my phone that I see every morning, right, is follow through, keep it going, don't get discouraged, and good things are happening, and when those good things happen, make sure we celebrate them.
I think that's great advice. I appreciate hearing that too. I think that applies to anybody in their job, their life, their home life. But I think that's phenomenal advice for coaches. So thank you for that. Is there something that you hope, this is my last question for you. Is there something that you hope your athletes remember you for when they look back on their playing days one day?
I think going back to your first question, right? Like, why'd you get into this? I think it was a combination of experiences, right, from competition. And what I want them to remember is that they had is I was able to provide them with a structure and a plan to help them be the most competitive and have the most fun and have the best experience that they could possibly have while they were competing at the high school level. Because as we all know, not all of them are going to be able to compete after this. And it's such a short window that it means a lot to me to see them enjoy competition and enjoy games and feel good about themselves. And that's the platform that I want to be able to provide. One of the hardest parts of this job, or the part I dislike the most, right, is when I see kids that are just moping, that are down on themselves consistently, day in, day out. That's worse to me than having to deal with maybe a belligerent parent or something like that. It hurts me to see kids like that, right? And I want to provide a platform to where they feel like we're structured and disciplined to put them in a position to be successful, and that they get something out of this and they enjoy doing it.
Well, I think they're going to absolutely get that from their experience with you. And I am so thankful that you are leading the Side Park program. And I can't wait to see what happens over the next few years with the program and with you leading them. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Stay tuned for future podcasts where we will bring on exciting guests in the sports world, highlighting spotlight coaches, athletic directors, former and current collegiate and professional sports players, sports dietitians, sports psychologists, and more.
What you eat and how you think can transform your athletic performance and overall well-being. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or fitness enthusiast looking to gain that mental edge and optimize your health, this podcast is for you.
Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media channels where you can get more exclusive content on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X at @span_athletics.
Until next time, stay faithful, stay fueled, and remain focused on your goals.